There are a specific 3 words that have been the bane of many of wrestlers' existence, and these words tend to come from the most extreme of fans. And while this profane mantra is the right of any audience member to shout, does that mean that we should? Well, that's the topic of this episode. Because today, Before we begin, allow me to remind everyone to make sure that you are subscribed to this channel and that your notifications are on, so that way you don't miss out on any of the content here at Dave Knows Wrestling. And now, onto the video. First gaining mainstream notoriety in Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW crowds were known for verbally pouncing on any wrestler that was caught making a mistake. And they did so with a chorus of "you f***ed up" chants. Nowadays, you're not as likely to hear this particular piece of public shaming as you once were, which is too bad, or is it? As there are those in the wrestling community, both fans and wrestlers alike, who can be pretty divided on whether or not this chant has any place in the wrestling landscape. And for some reason, this is a debate that I don't think we talk about very much, although I definitely feel that we should, as I think it's important to know where we stand on particular issues, even if it's something as simple as just 3 little words. Are you actually attempting to make a video demanding introspective? Huh. Yeah, you realize that ripping people to shreds for making mistakes is kind of what the internet does, right? I will admit that it may not seem likely, but I do believe that we, the members of the Know-It-All Nation, can have a healthy discussion on this topic. And I'm just going to be bringing up things from both sides that you may not have considered. And with that being said, let's just get started with the con side of things first. Now, obviously, this can rub many wrestlers the wrong way. After all, wrestlers are human, and humans make mistakes. I mean, how would you like it if people went to your job and publicly called you out for every little blemish that you made? On the other hand, believe it or not, some wrestlers actually welcome the chant. They feel that if you catch them with their proverbial pants down in the ring, you should call them out on it, with the shame that they feel from hearing it, encouraging them to do better. And let's face it, if you can take an elbow to the teeth or a broken nose or any other common injury that happens in the ring, you should also be able to take a few harsh words from the crowd. But conversely, other wrestlers would beg to ask the question, are fans even qualified to decipher what constitutes as a f*** up in the first place? Since without any formal training, how would a fan even know if a wrestler made a mistake? Sure, sometimes a botch is rather apparent, but what if it's all part of the act? As some wrestlers are really good at making their stage failings look organic, making it next to impossible to tell whether or not it's being done on purpose. For example, while some wrestlers practice the art of flat backing, bumping safely and evenly across the upper back, others land in all sorts of ways, making their falls more realistic and less rehearsed in appearance. Furthermore, sometimes a wrestler botching a move or dropping his opponent can be part of the in-ring storytelling. For instance, perhaps a wrestler's opponent is so heavy that they can't pick them up, or that they've been beaten so badly that they can't even climb the turnbuckle without falling off, or that they're just so exhausted that they simply collapse on the spot. To the untrained eye, some of these sloppy sells can look like botches, but if wrestlers avoid making their work look too realistic in order to dodge the dreaded chant, then we as the audience might be contributing to our own dissatisfaction, since convincing matches are much better than the ones that look practiced, at least as far as many are concerned. And might I also point out, it's not like if a crowd chants incorrectly, the wrestlers are going to stop what they're doing and redirect the "you f***ed up" chant back at the audience for being wrong. Although I have to admit that I would totally love that if it happened at least once. However, in response to that, while fans may not always be the most perceptive to identifying accidents when they see them, let's also remember where this infamous chant first gained popularity, as ECW was known as hardcore wrestling. What does that have to do with anything? Well, as I have said several times over, hardcore wrestling is a term that has frequently been misused since it was first introduced as the Extreme brand's tagline, because originally, hardcore was meant as being a hardcore fan, wrestling for serious and dedicated wrestlers and wrestling fans alike. But unfortunately, other promotions just confused the term hardcore with extreme violence. Anyway, the point of the matter is, hardcore fans, if they really are that dedicated, should have a more distinguishing eye when it comes to knowing if a wrestler did indeed make an error or simply perform a believable sell. And adding to that, some would even argue that there is a right way and a wrong way to sell and deliver maneuvers, and that pro wrestling was designed for specific and consistent execution. So while acts like the practice of flat backing may seem a little bit too rehearsed for some, safety is still the #1 priority. With those other more sloppy and dangerous looking performances being a little too close for comfort for certain fans, who feel that they shouldn't be done in the first place. Therefore, in the minds of those who look at things a certain way, they feel that calling someone out on their perceived fails, even if they are wrong, works as a good way to remind people to stay safe. However, safety brings me to another point, as sometimes mistakes happen, but they happen because of a need to protect someone, and not in spite of it. Such as, let's say we have a wrestler who is going to take a move, but they don't get enough rotation or follow through in the right way. The person giving the move sometimes will cradle them or catch them in order to prevent them from landing the wrong way. Sure, this results in a botched maneuver that is obvious for all to see. However, it was done in order to make a save that was necessary to avoid injury for both competitors. And so, should wrestlers really receive heat from fans just for looking out for one another? And yes, you could say that the nefarious chant is actually being directed at the person who failed to follow through and not the person giving the move, but let's be real, the executor is normally the one who gets the chant directed at them, since again, many fans may not always know who's to blame and therefore might not be in any position to judge. And also, let's not forget about the kids, as some promotions tend to skew a bit young with their demographic, and as such, should children really be exposed to that kind of language? But then again, there are other people who will say it's just a few dirty words, and if you bring your child to a wrestling event, especially an ECW event, then they probably should be prepared to hear anything that comes out of the crowd's mouths. And also, let's not forget about the issue of freedom of speech. In the end, the "you f***ed up" chant has been an almost ubiquitous part of many botches, both perceived and legitimate. Some have viewed it as a motivator and learning aid, while others have seen it as those on the outside looking in and not knowing their place. Some have viewed it as freedom of speech for wrestling fans, and others want fans to remember that they also have the right to remain silent. Although, ultimately, allow me to say that for every hardcore dedicated wrestler, there is at least one hardcore dedicated wrestling fan in the crowd. And with hardcore fandom, some hardcore criticism is expected to come with the territory. But where do you stand on the "you f***ed up" chant? Is it okay or is it not cool? Let me know down in the comments. And please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and to give this video a big thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, Dave knows.